Well, to discuss more on this matter, we are joined by Eric Mabuza, founder of Mabuza Attorneys. Eric, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Let's look at who exactly makes up this forum and perhaps what your concerns are as the lockdown period ensues, perhaps even having been extended by the President.
Morning, Lisa. The forum is made up of different organizations which represent shipping owners and tavern owners. So they are spread all over Gauteng. Some of them are even outside of Gauteng, but currently it's the 20,000 members who are in Gauteng who are complaining about the negative impact of the lockdown on their business.
Let's look at some of the negative impacts, perhaps even along the value chain for that matter, regarding your clients.
I mean, if you look at the ban, they completely cannot earn a living for almost a month. I mean, most of these tavern owners employ 2 to 3 people, so it impacts also on their employees and as well as their families. And you're talking about for the period of a month where people are not able to earn a living. So the impact is quite huge. I mean, without that even after the lockdown, some of them will not even be able to reopen their businesses. So it's quite a heavy blow on them. And all we are saying to the President is that there are less restrictive ways to address the spread of the COVID-19 virus. I mean, every day you have people going out to the groceries to buy the food and etc. I'm sure similar measures could be put in place where there are restrictions on the sale of alcohol, but the total ban is completely unconstitutional and prejudicial to our clients.
Okay, so for instance, Eric, I mean, based on that and based on the premise you're coming from, I mean, alcohol was considered a non-essential item during this lockdown period. So walk us through what the alternatives are. What are you proposing the President do? I mean, you're saying it doesn't have to be a complete ban. Perhaps you could limit the time constraints associated. Walk us through what those demands are exactly.
I mean, you could have a situation where there's a limit on trading hours. You could have a situation where there's a limit on the number of or bottles or beers one can purchase per day. So there are different ways in which you can work on this. I mean, you must also remember no one has told us now the connection between alcohol and the spread of the virus. You end up with a situation where the wealthy people or people who have been able to stock alcohol are able to continuously drink alcohol from their homes. But the poor people who have not been able to purchase alcohol are denied that opportunity. For instance, one of the things that you could also have over and above the trading hours as well as the limitations on the quantities is that people should not be allowed to sit and drink alcohol. We could have takeaways. All those measures will help to alleviate the spread of the virus. But a complete ban goes far much further than one expects. You must remember that even in times of crisis, we must be careful not to unduly infringe on the fundamental rights of people. So we must have that balance between protecting or alleviating the spread of the virus as well as and ensuring that the people's fundamental rights are not violated. Yeah, in our view, the total ban of alcohol has not achieved that proper balance between stopping the spread of the virus and making sure that people continue with their livelihoods.
Yeah, I think under the National Disaster Management Act, provisions have been made perhaps across all sectors. We also know that it is the associated factors with alcohol that also has, government perhaps standing firm in their stance, the possible risk of violence, the social distancing, the gatherings that occur at these times. So in lieu of this, you spoke about some of the alternatives, but exactly, practically, I mean, particularly in the townships, amongst the taverns, etc. I mean, what measures have been put in place to ensure that what you're asking for will follow suit as well?
But I'm already saying to you that you could have restrictions on the number of bottles one buys per day, on restrictions on the trading hours, the 1 meter social distance. That can equally be achieved. It's already been done with the groceries, with ShopRite and all those grocery shops. They are able to maintain that 1 meter distance. But I don't understand why we think that shebeen owners and taverns are not able to enforce that discipline.
Government has made it clear that perhaps limiting the sale of alcohol does play a significant role when it comes to flattening the curve. You say that they haven't mentioned how. But I want to know, in terms of the other issues associated with the consumption of alcohol, I mean, we do know that people who do consume the alcohol take it home. Some households are privy to gender-based violence issues, etc., which is a huge scourge in South Africa, even prior to COVID-19. I mean, how are you going to perhaps also mitigate against such factors that inevitably could affect households, particularly in the township as well?
You know, what you have yesterday you had a situation reported that there was looting on at the alcohol premises. If you don't deal with this issue carefully, you'll have people taking the law into their own hands. What we should be happy about is that my clients, instead of taking the law into their own hands, have approached the president now for him to consider relaxing the regulations. We've seen the regulations being relaxed with tax-free industry, which ferries a lot of people over and above every day, but we have not seen the spread of the virus. So this myth that once alcohol is sold in taverns is going to be an increase in gender-based violence, I don't know where the evidence comes from, because most people who were able to stock alcohol continue drinking alcohol from their home. We are not saying that people should be allowed to sit and drink from taverns. No, we are saying they can have regulations which allow for takeaway. But a complete ban on the sale of alcohol is just far extreme. It's on the other side.
Eric?
But we need to be sober about this thing and look at it from both sides, from both ends.
Eric, in conclusion, I just want to know, I mean, what is going to happen should government not come on board? I mean, what is going to be your response from here on to?
Now, our instructions are to go to court for the Constitutional Court to decide this issue once and for all. Remember, the issue is not only about alcohol, but it's also about whether the regulations per se achieve a proper balance between alleviating the spread of the virus, as well as respecting the fundamental rights of people, right to trade, the economic activity. So those issues are very, very critical to the issues that are raised in our letter to the president. But fortunately, the president has written back and said he's considering our letter, so we'll wait for Tuesday to hear what he says, whether he'll accede to relaxing the regulations.
Ban.
But we are very
all right. Eric Mabuza, thank you very much for joining us, founder of Mabuza Attorneys, just chatting to us about the Gauteng Liquor Forum, is threatening to take the president to court.